Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the January 22nd, 2014 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. Moving on to the first item on the agenda. Order of business is continued from prior hearings. Notice of intent, Kazanjian Enterprises, concerning DEP file number 2060719. The project location is 150 Wood Street. Discussion and approval of a revised plan submitted as required for the issuance of the order of conditions. The project proposes to raise or relocate the existing residential building and the construction of two commercial buildings, retaining wall, pavement, drainage system, associated grading, landscaping, and utilities, of which a portion is within the wetland buffer or bordering vegetated wetland. Mr. Erickson and Mr. Kazanjian, if you could just identify yourselves for the records.
So at our last meeting, the commission had requested that we increase the size of the trees on here from 1.5 inches to 3-inch trees. We have done that. We've increased the snow storage areas. We relocated the dumpsters so that they were a little bit more accessible. And they were talking about putting some crab apple over here. I don't think the crab apple will put on the plan, but we have no problem putting those in there in front of the existing house. The existing house will stay. We'll be taking off part of the porch, but the rest of it will remain. Other than that, the plan is identical to what we produced before. We will be cutting some of the larger trees in this area, leaving the stumps behind, and putting in the new 3-inch trees to make up for that sugar maples.
I asked Maureen Hanley, who was here the last time, and this is sort of tangential to this, but this plan by Mr. Close has a designation of a true north and then a plan north. That's the first time I've ever seen that. What does that mean exactly?
Mr. Close told me that he picked up a plan from the city that showed the plan north, but the true north is actually up in this direction. So he said he had copied that directly off one of the engineering plans. I don't know which plan it is.
All right.
It probably should have been taken off and gone with true north.
All right. I don't have any questions, Commissioner Varnum.
Last time we had also discussed the landscaping plan. I guess that wasn't intended as a submittal to us, but a lot of the things we were discussing, as you say, don't show up on this plan. Is there a way to get them put on our plan as well as the landscaping plan, like the crabapple trees? And
I can do that. I can combine the landscaping plan with this if you would prefer. It was just that the plan was getting awfully busy.
Mm-hmm. We also had some shrubs, and now you have snow storage there. I'm not sure that's the best, that particular snow storage area is the best place for snow storage, right in front of the barn.
Well, we don't have a lot of extra area besides that. We've got some snow storage right over here and a little bit more in the front. The preference would be over here because the barn is going to want access. There are doors there, so they're not going to block up the entire access way, but a small amount of that area can be taken up by the snow storage.
Okay. I would like to see some of the other plantings that we discussed put on this plan as well, because I think it all ties together. Because you're taking down trees, you know, you do have the ones replacing. But, you know, we spent some time talking about the landscaping, and it would be nice to have it on our plan as well, I think.
We could do that.
We also brought up, this has nothing to do with probably our filing, but maybe you could put on here stone posts or something. I think Mr. Kazanjian thought that was a good idea to put the stone posts in front of the house. That would be a buffer as well, in front of the house and maybe in front of the barn. The posts are on the property. It would just be, there's one over by the commercial building, there's 5 or 6 along Wood Street, and there's one right in front of the house still.
I don't think that'd be a problem at all.
I think, you know, especially in preservation of a house, that the more specific you can be about the surroundings of that house, I think the better on your plan, because, you know, people get going and maybe, you know, don't realize that that was something that was going to be saved. And I know it's not even within the 100-foot buffer, but I just wanted to say that because I think everybody agreed to it last time we were discussing it. Otherwise, I think everything that we had asked for is been. Thank you.
Commissioner Lynch? No. Commissioner Bearden? Commissioner Lovely?
Just a couple quick comments. First, I think the plan is consistent with the last meeting, so thank you for that. I think it met all of our requirements as a commission. But I would somewhat echo Commissioner Varnum's comment to the extent that you folks could consider the comments, because I think there were some good comments brought up at the last meeting with regard to the landscaping plan. Certainly that some of those comments aren't within our jurisdiction, but I'd hate to see them lost when you're going ahead and actually doing the development of the site. So I would just, to the extent that maybe we could kind of add in some of those features from your landscaping plan to this plan, that would be great. But I recognize there's a balance there. You don't want it to be so busy that you can't follow it. But my final comment on it would be just that there was some good feedback at the last meeting, and I just would hate to see that lost. And so just for the record, I'd like to have, to the extent you folks can accommodate that, please do so.
I think we could get that done, have that submitted before issuance of an actual order or condition.
Thank you.
Yeah, if the applicant agrees to include that on the plan, you're going to submit an updated plan anyway showing, overlaying the landscape onto our conservation plan. So those will just be minor additions. So we'd appreciate that. Now, we received a letter dated yesterday from the city engineer. Did you get a copy of that also?
I did not get a copy of that.
There was some confusion at the last meeting regarding who was responsible for doing the work. I know there's a land swap in progress, and from what I understand, part of the consideration for that is the city will be repaving, or it was already part of a separate filing that was approved by this commission, but the city's repaving and slightly changing some of the lines of Wood Street and the sidewalk on the opposite from your development. Now, they had also planned work along where you're developing, but because of the nature of this project, they're going to, well, you know, that it's going to change their aspect of it. But from what I understand, the city is going to be doing that work. There was a outline. I guess you're going to be responsible for the striping coming into the area, but and responsible for the sidewalk on the east side. But the city will be doing all the other work with respect to the Wood Street aspect of the project. But I just want the commission to understand from my conversation with the city that the city will be doing the work that's in the buffer zone along Wood Street, along that east side of Wood Street, in conjunction with this plan and this permit, even though Mr. Kazanjian is not going to be doing that work. They're sort of piggybacking off of this plan because it's contemplated by this plan. So I guess that's where the confusion you know, you, at the last meeting, I know you weren't here, Mr. Erickson, but it was Keystone Cops for about, you know, a minute or two with Mr. Kazanjian saying the city was gonna do it, and the city saying, no, Mr. Kazanjian was gonna do it. So, from what I understand, that's been worked out with the city engineer, so, and everyone's on the same page. I just want, the commission to understand that the city will be doing the work, as part of the, Wood Street project that is incidental to this project, and the changes that are contemplated to Wood Street as incidental. The city will actually be doing that work under this, assuming this gets permitted, but under this order of conditions, as opposed, because it's changed the nature of what the city was doing. It had been discussed that the city would perhaps be filing a notice of intent, when in fact they already have one for the Wood Street, but this project is changing somewhat, you know, to a minor degree, the footprint that they were originally operating under. So, I don't see a problem with that. I don't know if there's any discussion on that, but I just want just so you understand that, you know, the city could be a little laggard in getting the work done, so any COC, assuming this gets permitted, any COC would have to wait until the city has also completed their work on this project. So, all right. Is there any further questions from the commission? I'd like to open it up. Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns, either for or against this project? Is there anyone who would like to offer their comments or concerns, either for or against this project? Either for or against this project. Okay, hearing none. Now, we're anticipating an updated plan. What is the pleasure of the board? Do we want to close the public hearing in contemplation of receiving an updated plan, or do we want to continue? I myself feel that we can close the public hearing and permit this if that's the case, conditioned upon receiving a satisfactory landscape and the post changes, the granite posts on site, in conjunction with the discussions at the prior hearings and tonight. So,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
all right. By Commissioner Beardron, do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And then can we make a motion? Make a motion to issue a standard Lowell City Order of Conditions with those conditions that the chair just spoke of?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner Lynch. Yeah, I didn't hear the second part to that.
Instead of repeating, you just said what you said. So the map, you want to update a landscape plan, and you want the posts in front of the house?
Okay.
And we're missing some shrubs and trees on.
Which will be included in the
That would show
updated
up on the
landscape plan?
landscaping
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we have the motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Commissioner Varnum? Chair is yes. Commissioner Lynch? Commissioner Lovely? Commissioner Beardron?
Aye.
All right, good. It's unanimous. You're all set? Okay. And just be in touch with, you know what to do, but just be in touch with the board, and the order will go out. Get that updated plan into us sooner than later, and that way.
Within a couple of days.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks again.
Joe, can we make sure a copy of this gets sent to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, is Woodward and Curran Incorporated concerning DEP file number 2060722. Project location is 1002 to 1194 Pawtucket Boulevard, repaving of the existing parking lot at, 1002/1194 Pawtucket Boulevard along the Merrimack River. And if you could kindly identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is Bridget Mitchell, and with me is Rob Little, my colleague from Woodard and Kern. So we're here tonight representing the Lowell Regional Water Utility to present the proposed work at the raw water pump station on Pawtucket Boulevard, and this site is adjacent to the Merrimack River. So the river is right up here. Pawtucket Boulevard is down here. The proposed project's pretty simple. They're proposing to repave approximately 15,000 square foot existing parking area. And by
I'm
repave,
going to ask you to talk just a little bit slower, because if I'm having issues hearing what you're saying, I know I'm not the only one, so.
Okay, so the proposed project is repaving an existing parking lot. The parking area is approximately 15,000 square feet. And by repaving, they're just simply going to remove the existing paving, which is in pretty poor condition, and put down a binder course and a top course. We're not proposing to increase any impervious area. We're not proposing any modifications to the stormwater runoff. The reason we're in front of the commission tonight is because the existing parking area encroaches on two resource areas. There's, so like I said before, the Merrimack River is right here. The bank to the river is this line right there, and associated with that bank is that 25-foot riverfront, which is this dash line here, and the shaded area is the parking area to be replaced. And there's also a 100-year flood zone, which is this dash line right there. So the majority of the parking area is within the flood zone, which is why we're in front of the commission. So in an effort to protect those resource areas, we are proposing erosion controls along the entire parking area. So this heavy line here is proposed erosion control that wraps around the parking area here and here. That's the gist of the project. Those are the measures we're proposing. Are there any questions?
You are repaving, are you grading on site, grinding and using the same materials? What are you doing?
No, the existing pavement's going to be removed. So they're not proposing to change the sub-base. There's not going to be any regrading. It's just going to be new pavement.
Okay, how far down are you going?
It depends on the thickness of the existing pavement, and it's variable across the site. So we suspect it's probably anywhere from 1 to 4 inches.
Okay,
So they'll remove that, and we're proposing, I think it's a 2-inch binder course and then a 2-inch top course.
okay. Now, this is a relatively large area. You're almost entirely within the floodplain.
Yep.
And an inch, 2-inch, 3-inch difference in elevation can mean a really big difference. This is a very critical flood area. What I would like to see on this plan is a series of spot elevations.
Okay.
I know it's relatively flat, but a series of spot elevations in some way that the paving contractor, maybe through rebars drawn into the ground or surveying sticks or whatnot, such that they can match, either go under the existing grade or match, but not increase over the existing grade.
Okay.
I know this is just a repaving project, but, you know, when it's a relatively large area like this, I mean, you could be 6, 7 inches in the middle. You know, they could change some elevations to affect drainage. By the way, are there any catch basins on the?
Not within the pavement.
Okay. How big an area is that anyway?
The pavement area is 15,000 square feet.
Okay. Okay. All right, yeah, I think it's prudent that we see some spot elevations. Do you have any already? Or would that have to be shot?
You know, I'm not sure. I'd have to open the CAD file again and see what we have. I didn't look at the points. I just looked at the contours.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Varnum?
What type of erosion control are you proposing?
So we gave the contractor a couple of options. They can use either a straw bale with silt fence, which is one of the details we presented here, or they can use a compost mulch sock.
I don't have a preference. It's
Okay.
Commissioner Lynch?
The existing pavement that's going to be removed, are you
Yes.
going to be removing that the same day off-site, or is it going to be stockpiled until it can be removed?
I imagine it'll be stockpiled and then moved within a couple of days. It will probably take a couple of days to tear up the existing pavement.
Okay.
And then maybe another couple of days to relay the proposed pavement. They'll do it
Now,
in 2
if you
courses.
stockpile it on-site, are you going to put anything on top of it to make sure that nothing happens if anybody gets into it?
We can, it would be within the erosion controls, so it
Okay.
wouldn't be outside of that area.
Commissioner Lovely?
No comments, pretty straightforward. I'm fine with it, thanks.
Why are they repaving?
It's in pretty poor condition right now.
Do?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I no other comments. I think it looks good, simple.
Yeah, I know it seems relatively simple, but I think we needs to see some spot elevations.
Okay.
Because especially, 15,000 square feet, you're at a quarter of an acre, and you're gonna be in a situation where they're gonna be bringing in hot top. I don't know the process, I don't know how closely they can match elevations, pre and post, but I think it would be prudent to see some markers.
Okay. And thinking, when they're out surveying the site, they have to pick up, that's how they develop the contours, their spot grades. So if we don't have that, I'm sure that we can request it from our surveyor.
Okay,
So I think that there are spot grades available, and we can depict those on the plan.
all right, okay. All right, and that way, when you, when we come back for a COC and have an as-built, we can, match the grades and just
Yeah,
make sure that
confirm
they're
it.
the same. And again, it's floodplain issues, they're getting to be more serious, and FEMA is looking at, flood issues much more seriously. I'm sure people are paying flood insurance now, or having a little bit of sticker shock over the increases. And I know this is a commercial, commercial city-owned structure, but nonetheless, the city is also, responsible to be a good citizen and match grades, or even try and improve on the situation if they can. Parking areas are great ways to get some excess flood storage if we can get it, so. All right.
I have a question. What if the spot shots come back and they're all over the place?
There's gonna be some fluctuation, but, typically when we're changing topography, we're trying to match on a foot by foot, but in a wide open flat area like this, as I had indicated, even a change, if the elevation goes up an inch or two, that's a fairly significant amount of fill.
So if they are all over the place, would you want to see a design that it is pitched a certain way?
No, I don't think, that's, again, this is just a repaving project. I think the critical, obviously it's a riverfront area, but you're entitled to repave your asset. But the most critical resource here is the floodplain, because it's entirely within almost entirely within the 100-year floodplain, so.
So if the spot shots are all over the place, should she pick an elevation and just roll with it and make it all one?
No, I think it would be easier to match the elevations that are out there.
The only concern with trying to match spot grades is that this is, the existing pavement's pretty deteriorated, so if you have potholes or you have areas where it's deteriorated, at one point that pavement might have been 1 to 2 inches greater than what it's currently.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that.
If we come back with an as-built that doesn't match that spot grade exactly, I don't know if that's going to be an issue.
Okay, well, I'm assuming they're not gonna take a spot grade at the bottom of a pothole, but,
Well, I would hope not,
Yeah.
but I don't know where they took them, so.
and, obviously, the city topo maps are 2-foot elevations, so they're not gonna be a lot of help in this situation, but, but I'm sure, as I said, it's a relatively flat site.
Yep.
And I'm pretty confident that with, you could probably pick the corners and a couple of places in the middle and try and match them as best you can.
Okay.
Being cognizant that every inch over an area that's this size is I'm not gonna do any quick math here, but, you could be talking, 10 plus excess yards of fill, which is a fairly significant amount of fill, and, you know, the DEP has told us that even a wheelbarrow full is significant, so,
Okay.
all right. Okay. Any further questions? I'm anticipating that this is going to be continued for an updated plan with those shots on it, so.
Okay. Would it be possible to make it a condition?
We can't,
No.
no. Well, the problem with doing that is the DEP is going to step in and issue a superseding denial.
Okay.
And they've been picking these off left and right. You know, 2 years ago, I would say perhaps we could do that, but in the last several months, we've continued for an updated plan issuing an order, only to find out the DEP has issued a superseding denial of the project in the interim. And then it's just created a whole other issue, you know, a whole other problems. It's easier to get the updated plan and then permit the project.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, you're not going to be doing this until the spring anyway.
Right.
You probably don't even have any bidders yet, so.
Right.
Okay, so, all right. Is anyone here would like to offer their comments or concerns?
Just a quick question. You don't need
Sure.
to go far. John Hamblett, 495 Varnum Avenue, co-chair of Pawtuckaville Citizens Council. I wasn't here for this, but just a quick question, a statement and then a question. Obviously, any opportunity we have to increase flood storage capacity, we'd really appreciate it. I know when we put the solar panels in, they actually generated more flood storage area than they filled, and so anything like that. This is Lowell owned. This is the water facility, right?
Correct.
Is there any? This is probably for the engineers. Is there any benefit for that?
Porous pavement,
What is it called?
popcorn
Yes,
pavement?
like over Alpine Steak, the meat place, where it's like little worms of concrete, you know. And is there any value to that, or is it really just about flood storage,
Well,
or is that just prohibitively expensive?
Well, it's, one, yes, it's expensive. Two, this is a municipality paying the ticket and ultimately you. And three, being in very close proximity to the river, I would imagine sheet flow is ending up, you know, within minutes into the Merrimack.
So little or no value.
Right, into the Merrimack. It's generally, popcorn pavement is used for infiltration. And, you know, I'm sure that the ground in this fairly close proximity to the river is, you know, I don't know, is it bedrock out there, Mr. Erickson? You'd probably know that. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would imagine it's fairly saturated to begin with, so.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, then, my first comment stands. Any opportunity there is for more flood storage, we'd appreciate it.
All right.
By the time the river came up that high, it would percolate through the sand, the water table would come right up to the elevation of the river itself.
So, all right. You think you can have that before our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, good. Do I have a motion to continue at the request of the applicant?
Continue.
By Commissioner Varnum, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Beardron. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
What do I do with I keep putting my, Moving on to the next item on the agenda is other business, and it's a pre-application for 51 Shirley Avenue. Norse Environmental has requested the Conservation Commission to provide a preliminary review of their proposed project at the address listed above, which is 51 Shirley Avenue. This is not a public hearing. The commission will render no decision related to the review, nor guarantee any future decision, whether positive or negative, on any project that receives a pre-application review. The project includes the construction of a single-family home and tree plantings within the bordering land subject to flooding.
That was appealed to DEP. DEP has since issued a superseding order of conditions for the construction of the property. Mr. Mercier had asked me to come back to discuss with the commission what kind of plantings they would want on it to make this acceptable, so we'd file under the local wetland bylaw. So that's what the discussion is here for. So we're looking for input from the commission that would make this plan acceptable to them. I know Swarthy had come up with a plan last year that involved something like 9 trees being planted along the edge of the property to replace some of the trees that were previously cut. We had, I think, 5 on the plan that you're looking at. We don't have a problem with adding those additional trees. So it's just a question of what would satisfy the commission concern before we actually file something.
So what are you asking specifically in your,
Specifically, what the commission would like to see on the plan so that we can submit a notice of intent and receive an order of conditions under the local wetland bylaw that would satisfy the commission.
okay, what, then I guess I'm a little curious, why not just file?
Because we thought it would be easier to come in and talk to you and find out what exactly you might like to see on the plan.
Okay. I think we want to see more trees, but, you know, that being, I'm going to let the particulars go for the commissioners who were more involved with this than I, but Commissioner Varnum?
I don't recall the last time that we considered this proposal. Maybe, I don't know, in the summer, in the spring of 2013. I'm not sure. But we spent a long time talking about plantings. And in fact, plantings were part of the enforcement action in order to remove the enforcement order that we had placed on this property. This plan doesn't even represent what's out there right now. There are clumps of trees in each of the back corners where you have, I'm assuming this is a proposed tree, the green ash in each corner. There are already trees in those corners. And we spent a lot of time talking about the white pine, that it was too large a tree and wasn't appropriate for that location. And I think we wanted to see the plantings put in along the edges, as you referred to, before any other proposals came before us, since that was part of the remediation of this site after all the trees were taken down without our approval. So I'm not sure whether that other plan is in your file. I'm sure it's probably in our file.
Well, the original plan that the commission had given us showed planting all over the lot, and obviously if we're putting a house there, it doesn't make any sense.
No, I believe we had a 2-phased plan where the plantings would be put around the edges, not in the location where the house was proposed, and that would be done fairly soon after our discussion about it. And it seems that nothing has been done out there. We talked about species, we talked about locations, and we reserved the remainder of the trees to be placed in the center of the lot should the house not receive approval. So at this point in time, had the plans that we discussed previously been implemented, we should now see growing trees around the edges of this lot, which we haven't seen. So I'm a little bit displeased to see this before us, because you haven't even done what you had agreed to do for the enforcement order, and now you're coming back again with apparently no memory of what you'd agreed to do, because it doesn't reflect on this particular plan what we had agreed to do.
Portions of this lot are going to be excavated for the increased flood storage capacity. So it doesn't make sense to put the trees there, because you're going to be excavating in some of the areas that the plantings would have gone.
Well, I believe the locations of the plantings were pretty well discussed and thought out, and I don't see why those would change, no matter if you're excavating or not.
Well, we don't have a problem putting more trees along the edges and showing those there, but we would expect to put those in after or during construction of the dwelling so that they don't get damaged and destroyed in the process. When you put the trees in the ground, you want to have water available so that you can water them. You want to have the ground stabilized. It is all stabilized right now. It's all seeded. But you don't want to put the plants in before you perform construction. It's just not.
Well, if
Not a
that, if
reasonable
that's the
approach.
case, then I think you probably should file, and we'll see what you're proposing.
We can do that. We intend to do that. We're here to seek your advice on what would satisfy the commission. I understand you don't want white pine. That's okay. We don't need white pine. I tend to agree. I understand you want more trees along the edges. We can put more trees on the edges.
I'm not sure how much regrading is actually necessary or would even be effective if you're trying to get more flood storage. It's a fairly flat lot, except for that mound. And it seems that the flood storage is only at a couple of elevations and not at all of the elevations. I really haven't spent a lot of time looking at this plan because, we spent so much time on this project and then, here we are starting over again. It just seems that you're asking a lot of the commission here.
Yeah, let me see if I can refresh a couple of memories here, because Mr. Erickson, I'm getting the impression that we're talking about two different animals here. The DEP had issued a superseding order of conditions on this project, as you know.
Yes.
In the subsequent to that and prior to that, this commission had issued two separate enforcement orders. We issued one before the superseding order and we issued one after the superseding order. The substance of the enforcement orders had nothing to do with the development of the site. The substance of the enforcement orders had to do with restoring the site and stabilizing the site. Okay, whether or not a house was contemplated at any point in time had absolutely zero to do with the enforcement orders. We could have cared less. Okay, the enforcement order and the subsequent bond that resulted from that, the agreement with your client and the commission was to stabilize the site through vegetative plantings, trees, bushes, and lawn area, pending whatever the outcome was with the DEP. Whatever subsequent filing would result with the Lowell Conservation Commission, because after all, the DEP is only concerned with the state act. You still have the local ordinance that you have to deal with us on the superseding, regardless of any superseding order. Now, with all that in mind, as I said, you're talking about an informal hearing about a house and showing some trees on a plan. We're talking about, we want to see a stabilized site that hasn't been done yet.
The site is stabilized.
And a bond was put in place. That money and monies, I'm assuming, will be requested at some point in time to be utilized for that particular purpose. It was my understanding all along that Mr. Mercier, and I'm assuming he still owns the property.
Yes.
Okay. That he would be using the bond money for the plantings, for the stabilization, and that was part of the agreement with this commission, that would be an acceptable use of the bond money. So we're now looking at this and seeing a different animal. Okay. I think you need to satisfy the tenets and the terms and the agreement of the enforcement order, or show how you want to roll the enforcement order into a potential filing under the city wetland ordinance for an order of conditions. before really we can proceed on this, because as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Mercier has not met his obligations under the agreement. Now, I've been fairly agreeable, I guess, to be, with this bond money to be used, and to the extent that there's any left over, once a satisfactory result has been reached, an agreement has been reached, and the terms have been met, that instead of forfeiture, Mr. Mercier would be entitled to the balance of the money back. And in addition to that, would be entitled to use the bond money during the process of development of the site. But we're not getting a lot of cooperation on that side, and to meet the terms of the enforcement order and the agreement that are in place. Okay, we're seeing now, a proposed development, and I tend to agree with Commissioner Varnum. File. Give us some satisfaction, and show us how you're meeting the terms of the prior enforcement orders, and why Mr. Mercier should be entitled to use some of that bond money for the work that's been done and will be done on the site. Specify it, outline it. What has been done? What are the invoices? This was all part of the agreement with the commission. What exactly was being done? Spell it out. Show us. Because I'm not seeing it here. I'm seeing, again, whether this is something that was part of the superseding order with the DEP, that may or may not be. I don't know. I haven't seen the plan that was part of the agreement with the DEP.
That is the plan.
Okay. But I think you also, and the DEP, as you are fully well aware, said they were hands-off as far as the enforcement order goes. So you still have to deal with that issue. That's still an outstanding issue.
That's part of the reason we're here. We're asking you what kind of plantings would be acceptable for you so that we can resolve that.
Yeah, and I'm going to go...
He spent about $4,000 to $8,000 stumping it, cleaning it up, seeding it, and spreading the loam over. So he has spent money on stabilizing the site. It is stable at this time.
All right, I haven't been, and maybe I should start, I haven't been doing little, 5 bar or 4 bars and 1 cross, but this has got to be the 15th meeting, maybe more, on this particular project. I've been on this commission a couple of years, and I don't recall another project. This is a single-family lot in the city, and we've permitted skyscrapers with less meetings than this.
Well, that was part of the reason
I mean, this
that we're here.
this one's bordering on the surreal at this point in time.
It is for Mr. Mercier as well, but that's part of the reason we're here. We're looking for input from the commission so that we can get you a plan that you would find acceptable.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying to figure this thing out myself in terms of why we're discussing this tonight, and I would agree with what's been said thus far. There are 2 issues here. There's one, the enforcement order that needs to be resolved successfully to the satisfaction of this commission, and then the second thing is with the DEP rendering their determination and what is being proposed with this new plan, recognizing it's not a formal submittal, because let me get to the first aspect, which is the enforcement order. The latest correspondence I had was from your company dated April 10th, 2013, when we were talking about at depth the plans for restoration to meet the terms of the enforcement order. So I think if we were to go back to collectively our notes and look at what was discussed back and forth, to the chair's point, there was I got correspondence from back in November 2012 up through April of 2013 where we were having this back and forth discussion about how do we stabilize the site, separating out stabilization activities as part of the enforcement order versus restoration related to any sort of enhancements to the property. The second thing I would point out, or actually it's more of a question, is with regard to this plan, this is the exact same, the one you handed us tonight is the exact same plan that we had in in November 2012. It's the exact same date on it, and I don't see any difference. So I guess what I'm trying to get a sense of in terms of the proposed work with the house, how is it different than that earlier plan in light of what DEP has been requesting?
It isn't. This is the plan that DEP had. DEP approved it. It's the same plan.
All right. So the scope and the scale of the house that was proposed originally is not changed?
No.
Okay.
But part of the enforcement order called for planting trees over the whole lot. If you're going to develop the lot and put a house there, obviously that doesn't make any sense.
And
I can put trees around the edge, I can put different varieties of trees, and I can make it look good, and I can stabilize it better.
Right.
But I can't plant trees all over the lot because I'll just be taking them down
It's
again.
wasting money, I totally get that. But I think what you're hearing from this commission, and I'll speak for myself, is that I think we spent a lot of back and forth deliberation time to get to that point last April for what, the bond's in place, for whatever reason, the work wasn't done.
But the enforcement order was to plant trees all over the lot, and we didn't have the superseding order from DEP at that time. We have the superseding order from DEP. It doesn't make sense to plant
Right.
all over the entire lot. It's simple.
I think there's agreement there. I mean, I got the old figure that showed, in fact, I recall from the meeting where the original figure had a whole grid.
Yeah, and I
of trees,
can't do
and I
a
don't
whole
think
grid.
anyone here is asking for that. I think, though.
Now, prior to that, Swati had given us a plan that showed approximately 9 trees around the edges. It was a decent landscaping plan. I don't have a problem doing that at all. Mr. Mercier doesn't have a problem doing that. But planting the grid can't happen.
So to make it simple, wouldn't it, as a suggestion, wouldn't the request to the commission be looking at that plan that Swati developed with us collectively last year, be the starting point, say, if we do that, will that satisfy the terms of the enforcement order? My sense is you follow that plan, we go out and inspect that the work's been performed, verify that it's finished. I think at that point, the enforcement order would be over with, and then we can focus on the
that's
matter at
exactly-
hand, which is the filing to build a house out there. Is that?
That's the kind
am I
of
overly
input that I'm here
simplifying?
for. You know,
Why weren't those trees planted around the edge? I understand why you didn't do the whole grid and all that, but why weren't they planted at least around the edge?
why weren't they planted?
Yeah, because we were all, remember, it was,
Because part of the grading is along the edge.
yeah.
So you can't plant the trees unless you do the grading first. And we didn't have the permission to do the grading from DEP or from anybody else. When we got the approvals from DEP now, we can do the grading, we can do the work, and we won't be damaging the trees. And if we put the house up, we'll have water there so we can take care of the trees.
And that, some of this has even come back to more, I think at some point that there was some sort of mulch put out there, correct? Some sort of erosion grass or something like that, and I think the issue was it wasn't being watered. Was anything done?
Yeah, has anything been done at all? to
It
this
was hydroseeded.
That's right.
And the problem was that
It
without,
didn't take,
it was
right?
hydroseeded twice because it went through a dry period.
Right.
And without having some source of water, it's going to be difficult to keep trees alive in an area that's all deep sand. It's an extremely porous soil. We want to have a house there and a source of water, put the trees in, and treat them carefully so they grow.
So since this is an informal conversation versus a formal hearing, I mean, you know, I'll speak for myself and see what others on the commission think. My recommendation would be, let's go back to square one, which was that plan, that was where we were at, the one that Swati developed in consultation with all of us, and pick a time to go implement that work so we can put this enforcement order behind us, and then your client can focus on, you know, the notice of intent to put a house out there.
I don't really want to plant the trees until we start construction of the house, because the trees are going to get damaged by machinery and they can't get taken care of. Doesn't that make sense? That we would
So what's the...
finish all
what's
the
your-
work at the same time?
I don't have a problem with that. The question, though, is how do you stabilize the site in the interim?
It is stable right now. It's got grass all over it. The site is stabilized.
So perhaps if that's the case, maybe what we need is a site visit where we could go out there and we could reach agreement that it's stable,
Sure.
I mean, step one is to get this enforcement order behind us, because I think the waters are gonna be muddy, pardon the pun, until we actually get this enforcement order behind us. I think it would be a much cleaner filing if we can get the enforcement order behind us.
Well, if you want to drive by the property,
That's
if you
my
want to
recommendation.
meet
I
us
mean, I'd be
on the
interested what other-
property, we'd be happy to do that. But the site is stable right now.
I mean, that would be, I would be satisfied with that, but I'd be interested to hear what others on the commission have to say, because we still have the issue of the bond, related to the enforcement
And
order.
remember, the bond was for planting the grid
Understood.
pattern. And obviously, it doesn't
It's a
make sense.
placeholder, right?
I mean, I'm trying to find a happy medium here. I'm not working against you. I want to work with you on this to get a plan that's acceptable to everybody. I don't mind planting the trees. We don't mind spending the money on it. But
matter
I
of
don't
when.
want the trees to die. I want to be able to take care of them. I don't want a backhoe running against them. I don't want trees being scraped up by machinery. I want to get the whole yard landscaped.
All right, I understand that you were hoping that you would get a positive order of conditions from, or positive superseding order of conditions to develop the site from the DEP. Regardless, though, at the time that the agreement was made, and at the time that the enforcement orders and actions were taken, you did not have that. There was an agreement, there was an enforcement order. The purpose of the enforcement order had nothing to do with whether it was convenient for the applicant, whether it was economically feasible for the applicant to take certain actions. The sole purpose of the enforcement order was to stabilize the site. The applicant chose to ignore repeated orders to come before this commission, and that's basically what got him in the most hot water.
The site
Now,
is...
Mr. Erickson, I've got the floor and I'm going to speak. The site was ordered to be restored because the applicant, Mr. Mercia, chose to take action and strip the site without proper permits from the city. He was ordered to stop, he continued. And from the hearings that took place, work was being done on the weekends. It was done, through overkill, basically, to get it done and thumb his nose at the commission. All right? That's what got him in trouble. Now, he's picking and choosing to do what work he thinks is economically feasible to himself. And I, for one, really don't care. I want the site stabilized. I don't care at this point what sort of economic harm it's going to result in. I want the site stabilized. He has an obligation to do that. The DEP took a step back from that as far as the enforcement orders go. You have to satisfy the enforcement orders, whether you want to come in and request a modification to dovetail it into future development of the site. If that's the case, then the ball's in your court. You have to do that. But as it stands now, I am not going to change, at least for me, I am not going to change tack. As I said, we've spent more hours on this particular piece of property that Mr. Mercia chose to ignore repeated requests to work with us, to come in here and explain why he was doing certain things. He chose to ignore the law, he chose to ignore the bylaws and the wetlands ordinance of the city of Lowell, and to proceed on his own. Well, he took the risk and he's suffering for it. Right now, he has to demonstrate through you or through someone that he has taken steps to satisfy his agreement under the enforcement orders with the Conservation Commission. I, for one, have absolutely zero interest in hearing any further discussion about 51 Shirley Avenue until Mr. Mercia can demonstrate to the commission that he's done what he's been ordered to do. He's got a bond at risk If the work isn't done, he's going to forfeit the bond, okay? The floor, you can talk now. If you want to talk about future development and economic loss, I'm not going to hear it. This is an informal hearing.
I'm not
I
here for
suggest
that.
you go back to Mr. Mercier and say, you better satisfy the commission that you've done the work that you told the commission you would do under the agreement, under the enforcement orders. Until such time, I'm done with this.
The enforcement order that the commission gave to Mr. Mercier was for the cutting of the trees, and he had a valid permit in hand to cut those trees down. He had a valid order of conditions. He was shut down for that, told to clean up the site and revegetate the site. He cleaned up the site, got rid of all of the stumps, he hydro-seeded it twice, and it's revegetated. He was then told to plant the grid of trees. When he has plans to build a house,
Has he done that yet?
plant the grid of trees?
Yeah.
No, I don't expect
Okay, so
that
he
will.
hasn't met the terms then of the enforcement order and the agreement.
Does it make any
I
rational
suggest
sense
to you that
plant
you
trees
go
cut
back to
them down?
Mr. Mercier and you come back with a proposed plan to dovetail in why the enforcement order hasn't been met and to roll it in with future action on the property and to explain why actions were taken. Until such time, I, for one, whether my fellow commissioners are, I have zero interest in hearing anything further of 51 Shirley Avenue other than a discussion as to why we shouldn't be taking forfeiture of the bond at this point in time.
I don't see the logic of planting the trees in a grid pattern when you're waiting for a permit from superseding order of conditions from DEP.
That was not part of the enforcement order, okay?
The enforcement order was to plant the trees in a grid pattern.
Yeah, and has that been done?
No, it's not.
Okay, it hasn't, and there was ample opportunity to do so. The fact that there was no water on the site, quite frankly, I don't care. That's not my issue. Mr. Mercier can get a water truck in there to do that. I'm sure he has the resources. I
All right,
think
we'll
you
go-
need to go back, you need to discuss with your client as to how you're going to propose to work what you're proposing now, and what you need to do, and to discuss modifications to the enforcement orders in such a way that, you know, this commission will go along with it. I understand it doesn't make a lot of sense at this point in time to plant a grid of trees only to cut them down and regrade where they are. I get that too. The simple fact of the matter is, though, that was last spring, and this is this winter, and you had a whole growing season to do the work and you didn't do it. Because Mr. Mercier, at some point in time, decided, well, I'm not going to do it.
No.
Yet again, I don't know what X to the nth power disregard of an agreement or an order from the Conservation Commission to Mr. Mercier. As I said, come back, formulate a plan, formulate a new agreement and a proposal to the commission that rolls in the current enforcement order, why the work wasn't done, what you propose to do about it, and with a filing under the wetlands bylaw. Until such time, again, I may be just speaking alone here. I don't want to hear it.
That's fine. I disagree with you on a number of issues. He had a permit to cut the trees, and he stabilized the site, just as he was requested to.
Well, your memory is different than mine, Mr. Erickson, because I'm looking at an enforcement order that required him to revegetate the site, to stabilize the site, and my direct question to you was, has that work been done? The answer was no.
The site has been stabilized.
Has it been stabilized in accordance with what the commission ordered and he agreed to?
Not with trees, no.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission?
Maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but looking at that April 10th, 2013 correspondence, I think where we were getting kind of wrapped around the axle collectively a bit is the distinction between stabilization and plantings, and I think we ended up focusing at that point the conversation on a tree planting plan, and maybe that's what Swathi developed subsequent to that grid pattern which showed trees put throughout the entire site.
Swathi came up with the planting plan of the trees around the house first, and then the commission came up with the grid pattern. The grid pattern didn't make sense while you were waiting for a superseding order of conditions for DEP to develop the property for a single-family home. So it did not make sense at that time to plant the grid pattern. Swati's plan made perfect sense. There were 9 good-sized trees. It would have been good landscaping. We don't have a problem with that at all.
Well, Mr. Chair, to your comment, which I agree with, I mean, I don't want to be talking about this project anymore until we address the enforcement order, but could a revised plan be dovetailed into, kind of to what you were saying, a new submission?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying,
So
go back to Mr.
why-
Mercer.
That's what I came here for.
Yeah, but you're asking us what you want us to do. What I'm telling you is the ball's in your court. You have to come back and show what you've done and what you propose to do. Okay?
have a problem
I don't
doing that.
want to do Mr. Mercier's engineering work. All right? I suggest Mr. Mercier get some engineers to do his engineering work and to make a proposal to us, and we'll work with a proposal. I don't want to be his project designer. That's not our job.
We're not asking you to design it. We're here looking for your input on the
But
plan.
we've already done that, Mr. Erickson. We've done that ad nauseum in this particular case.
What I'm hearing, Mr. Erickson, is that we're all in agreement that putting a grid of trees out in an area that's going to be redeveloped with a house, and the trees in the middle being destroyed, doesn't make sense. But what we're saying is, we're not going to tell, it's not in our interest or our responsibility, for that matter, to tell you exactly what the plan should be looking like. I think you have a sense of what we're looking for, looking at maybe Swathi's revised plan as a starting point. Work with your client and come back to us with that plan so we can discuss it formally. But to have, and I think
I
it's as
don't have a
simple as
problem with that approach at all. I mean, that's exactly what I'm here to talk to you about.
I think, all I'm saying is, I think that's what the chair was
not what
just
I'm hearing.
suggesting.
That's what I'm hearing from you. It's not what I'm hearing from the rest of the
Chair, I
commission.
think we're in agreement, you and I are in agreement. I missed something?
Mr. Lovely's just being a lot more calm than I am, because I'm, as I said, I have zero interest in hearing this until I see something of substance back from Mr. Mercier.
I have no problem with Mr. Lovely's comment, and
So
I'd be
I
happy
think
to do that.
We're all saying the same thing, so I would say, you've gotten
Right.
your mission accomplished. You've gotten your feedback.
That's the
Go back
that's
to your
exactly
client.
what I
and let's
wanted.
go have a constructive dialogue in a more formal setting next time.
We will do that. Thank you.
Are you next?
I know, yes.
All right, let me call it. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is an informal presentation, 72 Fowler Road. Mill City Grows shall provide information regarding intentions for the site at the above address in order to identify any potential issues relative to floodplain management. And if you could identify yourself for the record.
Do you guys all have this draft plan? You do? Okay, great. My name's Lydia Sisson. I'm co-director of Mill City Grows. We're a local initiative in the city of Lowell that fosters urban food production in the city. We run 3 community gardens in 3 different neighborhoods. We run a very small urban farm right downtown on Middlesex Street across from the Transitional Living Center. And we do a lot of educational programs for children and adults, all focused around growing healthy food within the city of Lowell. This proposal is for 72.1 Fowler Road, as it's a city-owned property, and it does have a conservation restriction on it from this body. And we're just here to tell you a little bit more about what we do and what we're interested in doing on the site and get your feedback so that we understand better what we can and can't do. Our proposal is to run a production farm on the site where we'd be growing vegetable crops. There will be mechanized production, so there will be tractors on the land. And we'll use all organic and sustainable agricultural practices, so no synthetic fertilizers or chemicals. That does include the use of composted products, and I want to make sure that that's something that we can do here. So bringing in composted manure or composted vegetable waste and using that on the field for fertility. You'll see in this proposal that there's a draft site plan, and again, we kind of came up with this without necessarily knowing what we can and can't do. So feel free to tell me we can't do things here. But on the site plan, we would like to be able to have a wash-up area to wash vegetables. We would like to be able to have an area for storing tools in a shed. And also we would like a small area for gathering groups, so whether it's picnic tables, et cetera. It's a very, very rough drawing. This was really just meant for our neighborhood there that we've been working out this plan with. So we'd just love to hear any input. The one other thing I wanted to talk with you a little bit about is a deer fence, which is a fence that's usually over 6 feet tall. And so that is on the table. The neighbors haven't decided whether they want that or not, and I wanted to make sure it's even possible. One final thing is we will be accessing water via a water hydrant. We're proposing, we've spoken with the water department, and we will be accessing through that, and we'll be using all drip irrigation. So I know that there's a lot of issues with flooding concerns and drainage concerns. All of our irrigation will be brought down to very low PSI, so between 12 and 25 PSI, so really, really low. And we won't do overhead watering, we'll just do drip, so it'll be actually touching the ground. So, but any feedback, any thoughts that you guys can give us, we'd love that in order to continue to propose an appropriate plan for the parcel. And I will take notes.
Sure, that's a big fence.
Yeah, we'd rather not, but it's very expensive.
Okay, Joe, this is all within the 100-year floodplain, I think? I'm
It's
pretty sure.
500 year?
Yeah, it's only in the 500 years.
Oh, it's in the 500, it's not in the 100-year?
Not in the
It's in the
100, no.
Okay, lucky then, okay.
Yeah, we are lucky.
What is the resources that this is just conservation land?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. There's a conservation.
There's a conservation restriction, yeah.
I have a copy of it. I don't know. Do you guys have a copy of it?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make the comment, I suppose unless agricultural use is specifically excluded, that it's generally a permitted use for conservation land, provided that there's no reason that or a specific reason that it shouldn't be. For instance, sometimes conservation land could be, in very close proximity to a vernal pool or to a other sensitive wetland issue, and the use of herbicides or alteration or disturbance of the ground cover could hamper endangered species, rare species, and whatnot. But it's this particular parcel has a history of agricultural use anyway. So. That being said, how, now I see you have tractors. You're going to have mechanized turning over of the beds and whatnot. Okay. Now, how big of an organization are you? I mean, that's
Right now? Well, right now we're 2.5 people, but we'll expand for this.
2.5?
Just 2.5.
So you're an average sized organization. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we do have work study students, and the model of this would be that we'd have a farm manager out on site with some seasonal apprentices and interns. The neighbors are pretty conscientious of wanting to make sure it's all staff out there, so we're making sure that we fit a model for that in terms of staffing. And although we will be doing mechanized agriculture, it won't be, it'll be very, very respectful to the soil. We will definitely need to build that soil. We'll do a lot of cover cropping, so trying to keep as little soil bare as possible, and really building that soil back up. I know it's been farmed in corn for many years and now has about 6 foot tall weeds in it and probably some saplings. So we're really going to try and restore it back to agricultural, prime agricultural land.
All right, Commissioner Varnum.
This appears to be a great use for that. As you say, it's grown up over the years to really be a sort of a useless area for anybody or anything. So I think this is a great proposal.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lynch?
I agree. I think this is a great proposal, and it'd be nice to see this land used for that type of project, so Good job.
Thanks.
Commissioner Lovely?
I'll echo my fellow commissioners. I think it's a great proposal. I like the idea of drip irrigation. Not only is it good for water conservation, but you avoid a lot of nutrient loading issues where you have the fertilizers going off site and going into storm drains and causing algal blooms and anoxic zones and all that wonderful stuff. So that's great. Couple suggestions, just something to consider. I mean, sensitive species, if there are any, habitat enhancement things. I mean, I think agricultural use of property is a great opportunity. You know, I think in your proposal, you talk about educational opportunities. If you could kind of tie that in with any sort of habitat enhancement, I think that would be good.
Great.
And the only other thing I would throw out there is it is abutted by residences. I don't know how much manure you plan on stockpiling and things of that issue. You know, I mean, obviously, just try and be somewhat sensitive to odor issues.
Yeah.
I mean, not really our purview, but always good to be a good neighbor.
Yeah, we won't do any raw manure at all. Everything will be composted, so there's no scent. So thank you. Yeah,
right.
We're trying to be very, very cautious of that.
Thumbs up, great project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
You're gonna have a
Beaver?
farm stand?
We are probably going to end up doing, we're launching our mobile market this year, so what we'll probably do is take all the produce from that site and then drive around in the city of Lowell. So we're partnering with local hospitals and health centers, senior facilities, and then neighborhoods to host mobile markets there. Because of the high volume of young children and neighbors in that area, they were a little hesitant to have so many people coming on and off the site. So I think we're going to bring the market to the people. And we'll do one probably over at Duville pretty consistently. But yeah, we'll have many opportunities for people to purchase the produce grown there in the city.
Okay. Are you gonna have to do any clearing?
So that is a good question. We're not sure because we actually haven't been able to get on the site yet because it's landlocked. So we're working with Farley White, who just bought 1001 Pawtucket Boulevard, to work out that access point. I do think there will be some brush clearing, but I'm unsure about the tree situation. I think everything is just saplings, and I'm hoping, I know there's a big stand of trees. When you're looking at it from Wedgwood Circle, from the old Macom building, it's the upper right quadrant. There's a big area of trees, and we're hoping just to keep all of that so there's as much privacy as possible.
Okay.
We've had some recommendations to, trim back the fence line so there's more of a visual, people could keep an eye on it from the Farley White property, but.
And then now, are you pro fence? Because you want to keep the deer out, or what's going on with that?
I've heard of some really interesting alternatives to fencing, like Irish spring soap. But I mean, I've always run farms with deer fence. Usually they've been electric. I don't think that that's appropriate in this neighborhood. So a deer fence may be the only option. We're going to try some other things to start, mainly because the neighborhood hasn't decided what they would like.
Okay, so it's based on the neighborhood.
Yeah,
So do you need permission? Are you coming for permission from us, or?
I don't know what we need to come to permission to you guys for, and that's kind of just what we wanted to find out tonight, including just, if we were to put a shed, porta potties, can we even have them there because they can, move if there's flooding.
Yeah, you're showing a farm stand on here. Too.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's gotten nixed.
Yeah.
So any types of little things like that, we want to make sure that we know if it's even allowed or not. The water department has offered us to rent space for storage, equipment storage, so tractors, so there wouldn't be anything like left over here at night, as well as storage of tools. We're trying to work out a site for a hoop house and a greenhouse that's not on this site because of the restrictions and because of the neighborhood. So we just want to know what we need to come back to you guys for, if anything, and yeah, better educate ourselves around that.
Do we have jurisdiction on that under the 500 year?
Well, yeah, no, we have jurisdiction because it has a conservation restriction placed by this commission on the property.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that the restriction says any further action on the property, you shall file with the Conservation Commission, blah, blah, blah. It probably has that standard clause right near the end. As I had indicated at the beginning, agricultural use is generally a permitted use. So at least, it's you peruse the the Wetlands Protection Act, agricultural use is one of those exceptions, and is permitted use in buffer zone areas and wetland areas and whatnot. That being said, yeah, I mean, if you were going to propose structures and stuff like that, that would definitely need prior approval
Okay.
from the commission.
Can you define structures for me? Just, is it something that's going to be like,
Yeah, I mean, I know you had indicated on your plan a tool shed and stuff like that. You would need, you would be prudent to get, assuming you were within the footprint of the conservation land. If you're
Okay.
if you're on the MACOM side of that, then you're probably going to be okay.
okay,
And the DPD office could answer those. Our administrators could answer those questions for you.
Okay.
Are you planning on a beehive?
on a beehive?
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that yet.
Because there's several farms, in the area that do have bees.
Okay.
And you may want to, talk to them just to make sure you're not. I don't understand the science behind that, and I know that bees tend to be very finicky creatures. So, and they're somewhat getting to be endangered. So, it would be really cool. Plus, you get honey out of it too. So.
Or should I say, or you could partner up with the people who have bees and maybe sell their honey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too far from this area, up on Lawndale Farm in Tingsboro.
Yeah, yeah, we know that.
Kenny Times is the farmer there, has several beehives on his property, so,
Okay.
I mean, that's someone to talk to. I'm sure there's other farmers in the area that you can talk to about that too, but he's about probably one of the closer ones.
Great. Thanks.
I got one final question. The land's been historically agricultural use. I mean, there's no urban fill out there. We don't have to worry about things like lead in soil.
No, I don't
Alright.
think so. I mean, there was some interesting construction that happened back there, so you must know better than I do about the history, but,
I'm actually not too familiar with the history
Okay.
of the site, but I do know there shouldn't be any issues in terms
Yeah.
of lead or anything like that.
It's not like going downtown Lowell and digging up a parking lot and using the native. No, and that, I don't know if, I mean, there's been enough, as the chair was saying earlier, I mean, there's a lot of interest in urban farms. In fact, the Sunday Globe just had a whole thing about
Yep.
them as well. And
It's Pawtuckaville, it's God's country.
but in some places where the soil's in question, they have raised
Yeah.
beds. But if we were talking about generally kind of historic agriculture use, that's
Yeah.
fine. I just wasn't sure of the.
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Varnum could probably answer better than I could, but my understanding of that site is that there was a, extremely long history of agricultural use.
That's
So.
fine.
I mean, I suppose you probably wouldn't find any urban dumping. I mean, suppose the real dangers would be overuse of fertilization
Yeah.
and pesticides, but,
yeah.
but again, from what I understand, it was corn, so,
Yep.
which is a fairly resistant crop, so.
That was my,
Yeah.
just a question that came up afterwards, but thank you.
And all of our other sites within the city are all raised beds and built up with new soil, so, yeah. We're excited to not have to do that. It costs a lot of money.
How big of an area is that? That's a couple of acres out there. isn't it?
4.
Is it 4?
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing, yeah.
That's a big tract.
Yeah, and we're looking at this as a phased approach, so I'm sure we'll come talk to you if we have any other structures in the next year. But I think this first year is all about gaining access, gaining water access, and then the next few years we'll build it up all the way to full production. So we're really just going to try and deal with that weed bed that's there now, and then bring structures on in later. So we'll be in touch, definitely.
Yeah, just with the understanding, I mean, it's, a farm stand, stuff like that. I mean, to me, that's a very low impact use. I don't want to speak for my fellow members, but, it brings back a little bit of Americana, and, and again, this was the reasoning behind the conservation restriction was to allow the original development, because that whole area was agriculturally used way back, and then when Fowler and Boulevard were developed, the prior owner had deeded or had created this conservation area, which ultimately ended up with the city. So to see it being used for something, You know, again, whether it's soccer field, whether it's a baseball field, whether it's, you know, open space, which was what it was, but no one was using it. So to see it used for something, and something as wonderful as that is, you know, is cool. And, you know, hey, this is New England, this farm stands, and they're rapidly disappearing.
Yeah.
So to see it being used for that, again, and something, you know, something that Mill City grows, which hopefully will be around for quite a while.
We hope so, too.
You know, in the urban, you know, in an urban setting, I think is really, you know, it's a cool use for the property. So best of luck.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. We'll take you on a tour as soon as there's a thaw. And I'll give you some brochures, too, just so you can be in touch with us.
Thank you. Now I'm hungry. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys so much for your input on this, and we'll definitely be in touch, and really do welcome you out anytime for a tour in spring. So thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, election of officers. Commissioners will elect the 2014 officers for chair and vice chair. So,
I would make a motion to elect Chris as chair. I would also like to make a motion to add Commissioner Varnum as vice chair.
I'll second that. I don't get to do that all that often. All right. All in favor of the first motion by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner Varnum, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. I guess I should have abstained from that, though.
That's okay.
I'm
Are you okay with
I'm
it?
abstaining.
Yeah,
I'll accept. I'll accept. All in favor of the motion for Commissioner Varnum to serve as vice chair for the 2014 year, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Woohoo! Congratulations!
No minutes. And thank you for your confidence. Although after tonight's meeting, I'm not so sure. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
By Commissioner Lovely, seconded by Commissioner Lynch. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Good night.